Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Monalisa Roy Chaudhary. Now I'll be taking the 10th module. The title of the module is Military Families. Till now, we have done women as victims of violence, women as perpetrators of violence, but in the whole scenario, we see that there is a silent, sacrificing family behind the army or behind the military men. So now we are going to have a look at the families of the military. The families of the army personnel become an inadvertent yet integral part of the war process. The family plays a wide range of roles and experience war conflict in myriad ways. I would like to point out the problems and the difficulties that the families face during and even after war. Families imbibe patriotic values in their children, sons, daughters, which enables them to fight for their country, state, community. Mothers often sacrifice their children for the cause of the nation. Children in the military families, particularly during war, suffer frequent and often long separations from one or both their parents. Trauma, violence, and other psychological stress disorders are very common in these military families.
My dad, he's from artillery, so he took part in 1999 Kargil war. For me, every day it was terrifying. Whenever I used to come back from school, I used to put on news thinking, something is happening. We were always worried about his life because, it's not an easy job. He's fighting people on a daily basis, so yeah.
As a kid, you don't really understand that there is a possibility that your dad might not come back or something like that. You don't really understand that.
I knew there were a lot of risks and all, but not for one moment did we take it in that way. Otherwise, then life would become very difficult to live.
All that the civilians know is that, okay, army people get a lot of perks. What they don't really get is that there's a lot of sense of responsibility involved.
आर्मी सिर्फ रिस्क के लिए भर्ती नहीं होते. आर्मी एक प्राइड सर्विस करने के लिए जो अपना देश के लिए हमने सोचा है अपने दिल में, वो एडवेंचर हम अपने लाइफ में लाए, वो सेवा हम देश के लिए करें, उसके लिए आर्मी में भर्ती होना बहुत ज़रूरी है.
One of my friends, I asked him कि भाई तो फौज में हो गया फाइनली, हम लोग तो साथ में बड़े हुए हैं, कल को गोली वोली लग जाएगी तो क्या सीन है. तो कोई बात नहीं यार, इसी के लिए फौज ज्वाइन करी थी. सो उसने बहुत कैजुअली ये स्टेटमेंट दिया, इट्स अ फैक्ट. और जितने भी लोग आर्मी ज्वाइन करते हैं उनके मुंह से बहुत कैजुअली यही चीज़ निकलता है, कोई बात नहीं यार, इसी के लिए फौज ज्वाइन करी थी, मर लेंगे, गोली खा लेंगे. वेरी कैजुअली दे से, बट इट हैज़ अ डीप मीनिंग टू इट.
Very honestly, after the first day, the first kick we got in our stomach and we lifted our trunks and reached the squadron. After that, we never knew what happened till we passed out from the India.
My grandfather was in the army. My father was in the army. In 1962, 65 and all 71 war, my father, his two brothers, they fought all these three wars. Then I was there in the Kargil war myself in 1999.
The day I put on my rank, that was one of the most fascinating moments of my life. My parents were there and they pipped me, and I can never forget that moment in life.
It is only since 1980s that traditional and feminist scholars started taking interest in military families in an organized manner. The studies on military families look at how the army co-opts the family into having an unfailing patriotic loyalty. The family is important in maintenance of the institution of army itself. It is the sacrifice of the mothers, the unpaid work of the wives, and the hero worship of their children that makes it possible for the soldiers, who are mostly males all over the world, to be combat ready. Families have to make immense sacrifices, often relocating frequently, putting their own interests and needs for career and education on hold. The military family deals with continuous fear, psychological trauma, and physical violence to enable their family members to serve. Members of the military may marry at an early age when they face deployment, which results in having children at the younger age when they might not be psychologically prepared to be parents. This stress, added to the stress of deployment and redeployment, often lead to high divorce rates. Because it's usually the mentality of the Indian parents that if their son gets a job, they can get married. So in the army, we see that, the recruitment starts from a very young age. They pass the higher secondary and they're recruited into the army. And the parents tend to get their children married, which results in early parenthood. Military families often have to deal with substance abuse, in particular alcohol abuse, which is among the most critical adverse impacts of military service. It is related to many negative behaviors and impedes the veterans' ability to resolve issues such as trauma and successfully reintegrate into their families, retain employment, and maintain stable housing. It's usually the substance abuse or the alcohol abuse that breaks up the family. When a soldier is injured or dies during combat, the effect on his or her family is life-changing. For example, physical injuries require families to adjust to long and expensive rounds of treatment and rehabilitation. When a service member is permanently disabled, everyone in the family is affected, and often family members are forced to take new roles and responsibilities. War often affects the soldiers psychologically. This affects a soldier's personality, and this in turn affects the entire family. A family is overcome by grief by a parent's or spouse's death in combat. In addition, the family lose their identity as a military family when they must move away from the supportive military community. So now we are going to analyze the situation of women in a military family. In a range of roles played and experiences of military family, it is the woman who plays the crucial role. A woman is the mother who prepares a son to fight for his fatherland, and she is also the wife who takes on the traditional role of the man in the family in absence of the man himself. The wife and the mother who works in the military juggles between a military career and a family responsibilities. Women also hold peace rallies to oppose war, to bring their men back home. Now let us talk about the war mothers. Now, history has glorified war mothers sending their sons, and some less frequently their daughters, to the war. The image of the patriotic mother evokes a brave and stoic woman who is willing to sacrifice her child for the greater cause of the nation. Leaders throughout the war history has glorified this woman to increase recruitment, to make woman party to the war. The dichotomy of good mother and bad mother was created. So, the concept that if you can send your children to the battlefield, you are a good mother. You can sacrifice your child for the sake of the nation. Whereas, mothers who are not ready to do so were labeled as bad mothers. So, the experience of the mothers throughout history has varied. The experience of women through the world wars and the post-Cold War conflicts of recent times have, however, shown that this all-sacrificing good mother is a myth. During the run-up to the First World War, women who were already in the public sphere demanding the right to vote had started opposing the plan for war. Throughout history, from war to war, mothers have always opposed war. This opposition is not just out of motherly instinct to protect their children, but also is a clear political stance. In fact, the Old Woman's Project clearly states that it is futile to oppose war almost entirely on the basis of being mothers and daughters or grandmothers. In fact, the Mother's Day, which has gained immense popularity over years and is celebrated across the world, has its origin in Julia Warho, a mother opposing the American Civil War in 1870. On the other hand, it is also true that there have been mothers who had supported war. During the rule of Hitler and Mussolini, women played the role of the perfect feminine woman, which included being the perfect mother who sacrificed their children for the nation. Women have played similar roles in countries like Russia and even in India during the independence struggle. There were women who sacrificed their children for nation, community. Then there are women who are mothers and are working in the military. These military mothers often face double burden, being a working mother and being looked not as a so dependable parent. In the USA, many of the women who are mothers and are working in the military are single mothers or going through a divorce. These women have to give the custody of their children to the third party during their deployment. When they return from the fronts, they have to fight in the civilian court, often to gain the custody of their children. In the courts, military moms have an even tougher time than the civilian working mothers. The courts often look at the military mother as being detrimental to the well-being of the child. The absence of the mother who is in the military creates tension in the family dynamics with their children, husband, and other relatives. The family as well as the larger society expects the woman to resume their traditional role as a mother and caregiver as soon as they return from the battlefield. The psychological and physical trauma faced by a mother in the battlefield makes it difficult for most women to do so. The entire structure of the family becomes a sacrifice in the process of war. Now we'll come to the military wife. I quote, "How does the military secure the commitment of the wife to the husband's job? It makes the nuclear family the building block of the whole military institution by emphasizing the team approaching to the man's job." Unquote. Military wives have to fend for themselves and their families while the husbands are deployed. After the return of their husbands, they are often expected to resume their duties as caregivers, and they sometimes have to live with husbands who are physically disabled or emotionally withdrawn or aggressive. Dealing with the war veterans who are suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder can be equally traumatic for their spouses. The entire family in the military system ensures that the military wife is rarely left to fend for herself. She is subject to two patriarchal authorities, her husband and the base commandant. Amongst all the role that women play in and for military, it is perhaps the military wife who makes the biggest sacrifice. Now, here are some points which evidences this logic. In most countries of the world, except during combat, army wives are expected to follow their husbands around them wherever they are posted. While the soldier gives all his time and commitment to his patriotic duty, his wife is expected to play the role of both parents and also do all the domestic work. In addition, she is supposed to be the soldier's moral and emotional support, rejoice his achievements and victories, and when he loses or is injured, she is expected to nurse him back to health. Within the military community, it is seen that it is a cultural norm for the military wife to maintain the hierarchy between the ranks, entertain their colleagues and bosses of husbands, and lend shoulder to the wives during their bereavement. Military wives, more often than not, go through pregnancies, give birth to children on their own in the absence of their husbands. In United States of America, Military Spouse Appreciation Day is celebrated on the Friday before Mother's Day in May. Frequent transfers is often seen. Military wives put their careers on hold. Wives give up their lucrative jobs, and this leaves them dependent on their husbands. This dependence can impact adversely on the marital relationships. Now we see how the mothers and the wives are affected in the military life. Now we come to the children. Children of the military families have a unique childhood because often one or both parents' involvement in the military keep them away from their families, and this gives rise to a range of problems. Frequent relocation during their parents' posting is a common occurrence in the lives of the children of the military families. While this makes them see new places, new culture, and make new friends, it becomes difficult for them to build a long-lasting friendship. In some countries like USA, custody of the children of single parent is given to the third party during deployment of the parent. The same applies if both parents are in the deployment. During this period, the military considers the employee to be childless. Even in the cases where one parent is in the military, the children live with the other parent. They have to relocate often due to the parents' relocation. This creates a sense of dislocation amongst the children, and which results in the psychological problem like isolation and depression. Because when they are relocated, they have to again adjust themselves to the new environment, new friends, new school, which often leads to depression, and they feel lonely at heart. Military children are often born and raised and cared for when the father is absent for more than 80% of the time. They live in constant fear and trauma of having their parents deployed or already being in war. Along with the sufferings from their own trauma of having one or both their parents in deployment, it is seen that the children of war often face violence at home. Children are often given increased responsibilities when one or both the parents are deployed. This disrupts their routine, and as a result, they experience anxiety and difficulties in coping with their schoolwork. So now we'll come to the next point. It is trauma, stress and violence within the military family. Military families across the world faces a high level of stressors related to deployment. Families are faced with worries about safety and security of the military family members. Upon their return, the soldiers, due to their physical and psychological injuries, often find the process of reintegration with the family difficult. Post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, violence, substance abuse, anxiety, etc. are common problems within the military family. Across the world, particularly when a nation is engaged in active battle, military families have been observed to have high level of domestic violence. Stress of combat, frustrations of failure, and the extreme masculinity taught the military men to be very, very aggressive. And this is faced by the wife in form of intimate partner violence. The heroism associated with the veterans often keeps women from reporting the violence they face. Their husbands who are celebrated as heroes of war, they cannot expose them as abusers. So this prevents the wives of the intimate partner violence to be silent. Children of the military are often seen to have a disrupted life because there is frequent reallocation and absence of one or both parents for a very long period of time. These children have to be extra sensitive towards their parents' moods due to the high stress situation at home. Anxiety and nightmares are common issues faced by military children. They also find themselves at the receiving end of their parents' trauma in form of physical and psychological violence. Now, let us draw some examples from violence against women in the military families in USA. The victims of domestic violence in the military is predominantly the female civilian spouse of active duty personnel. Victims normally have children, and more than half have been married 2 years or less. Substantiated spousal abuse involving members of the military is predominantly perpetrated by male active duty personnel, and this has been reported in the study of spousal abuse in the armed forces. Among the services, the Army consistently had shown the highest rate of domestic violence, followed by Marine, Navy, and Air Force. Abused women in military communities are often fearful of reporting incidents due to lack of confidentiality and privacy, as well as limited victim services. In the sample of active military women in Greater Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, 29.9% reported adult lifetime intimate partner violence, defined as a physical and or sexual assault from the current or former intimate partner. African American women were significantly less likely to be abused during military services than were white women, but ethnic group membership was not at a risk factor for lifetime abuse. Let us crack in the edifice the necessity of the man in maintaining military. The impact of deployment and reintegration on military marriages and children are a part of the shared sacrifice that comes with military services. Paradoxical as it may sound, the military institution needs the family to sustain it. It is the family that sows the seed of patriotism in children. It is the family which constitutes the notion of honor that the Army protects. It is a high-stress situation like war. It is the hope of returning to the family which keeps the soldiers going. It is seen that military service members marry young. When a young person joins the military, he or she feels the need to have a family in order to feel secure. Yet, it is the family which sacrifices and suffers because one or more members is in the military. The institution, which is supposed to protect the family, in reality breaks down traditional family values and systems. Now, there is a feminist critique on the military family. The military is an extremely gendered, patriarchal institution. All over the world except USA, Israel and South Africa, more than 80% of the military personnel are male. Along with the numbers, the culture of the military as an institution encourages soldiers and personnel to have masculine qualities like bravery, physical strength, ruthlessness to the enemy, and emotional detachment. It also demands 100% loyalty and time commitment from its employees, leaving no space for family or personal life. I quote, "Like other gendered organizations, the military family takes for granted the naturalness of masculine-feminine polarity, or the idea that men and women are fundamentally different. Relatively, few members of the community question the patriarchal dichotomy between tough warrior men and supportive dependent women, unquote. The feminist critique of the military family hence opposes these gendered notions and criticizes the nature of family support programs created by the military that reinforces the gendered role of men and women. It recognizes that the violence faced within military families stem from these gender binaries and enforced masculinities. The military, through its socialization and justification of war trauma as an accepted factor, increases violence against women and children. To address this violence, the very patriarchal nature of the military has to be challenged. The feminist peace movement, which has been opposing war and military as patriarchal practices, also opposes the use of family by the military. The feminists want to free women from all subordinate roles imposed by patriarchy and recognizes how within a military family women are often subjugated. Like always, within feminism, however, there are opposing views and debates on this too. Feminists who advocate for equality between sexes often end up supporting military policies on family support as long as it applies to both men and women equally. The postmodern feminists, however, place the institution of both military and family within the context of gender, race, class, religion, and other power sources. The military institutions often base their organizations on social divides. The military family therefore ends up upholding these values and has to be critiqued from this power-oppressed analysis. Thank you.